Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is the finale episode of growing Joshua trees from seeds. Day 3621, 9.91 years. It's a real mouthful to read off the subtitles there. So you're probably surprised as to why this is a finale episode. I'll be explaining towards the end. In the beginning, let's just enjoy the moment while I cover the footage in these clips. So I was just checking underneath this pot for slugs and other undesirables to get rid of. Sometimes there's American cockroach nymphs and crickets and other things. The bottom of this pot, the underside, was actually fairly clean this time. So you can see the reservoir was full. This is a few days later, so I'm watering. So I think up to this point I hadn't watered for quite a while, so the cocoa coir had dried out. And what I did here was use some reverse osmosis water. Actually, it was the idea I started getting in springtime to purify and wash away all the salts that had accumulated from many years of fertilizer, Miracle-Gro, fertilizations, and using tap water. The tap water here is really hard in Carlsbad, California. The ppm, part per million of dissolved solids, is like 600. Sometimes it's 500. It's pushing the envelope of being unfit for human consumption. And the other thing is the pH of the water here, the tap water, is really high, so it tends to be from 8 to 9, which is unacceptable for plants. They need somewhat of an acidic environment in terms of the water. And most plants grow best at a pH of 5 to 7. So that's several orders of magnitude off in terms of the pH, in terms of either the proton concentration or the OH group concentration. This is on the basic side, so it's got more OH groups instead of an abundance of protons being acidic. So that affects nutrient absorption, and because of that, I was theorizing that many of my plants weren't growing well because of that. So I decided, why not try to desalinate all of these salted up cocoa coir mixes and just flush with reverse osmosis water with as many gallons as I could. But yeah, I mean, with a tabletop countertop system, I could only produce 1.7 liters of RO water per 5 minutes, which is great for drinking amounts, but for doing something like flushing a pot is just way too overwhelming. So you could see me just pouring gallon after gallon of this, and it's very slow absorbing, so I never got around to fixing the problem. I tend to procrastinate a lot in these kind of growing series in terms of not solving these like minor aesthetic problems, such as since I did a transplant from a cylindrical mass of cocoa coir in a taller pot that I cut open and transplanted into this much larger volume pot that's shorter. The top of the root mass, basically where the root system begins, is above the rim of the pot. So every time I water like this, or use the front yard hose, it starts to wash away and cause visible amounts of erosion. So it's actually quite high maintenance. It's annoying. But on day 3647, almost 10 years, I got a tankless reverse osmosis system that could produce high volumes of RO water. So the production rate was much higher, and it is a little bit wasteful to use RO water for plants like this, especially in very big pots. Well-established plants use a lot of water, but I figured it was worth a try. So this TDS out, total dissolved solids, says it's 11, and that's by Carlsbad standards very clean. In fact, if you buy store-bought reverse osmosis or distilled water, at least the distilled water that I tested in the past, part parts per million was like 15 or 14. And what you just saw there was, if you take the new tankless RO system under the kitchen sink and you filter it a second time with the countertop system, you get an output of 3, which is unbelievably pure. So yeah, the Joshua tree is doing pretty well. It keeps losing leaves, but it had a very torrid period of growth a while ago. So I think that's why all those leaves are being lost in 2025. But overall, it looks pretty healthy. It's getting taller. The trunk gets longer and longer. And I keep cutting away the needles just for aesthetic consistency and to get them out of the way, because they kind of get in the way of brushing up the cocoa coir, shoring up that mound, due to the problem caused by the transplant, the root system beginning higher than the lip of the pot. So you can see there's a lot of cobwebs. During this period of time, my plants were doing pretty well. They responded very, very well to the initial few weeks, the flushes of reverse osmosis water, which tends to have a pH of around 5 to 7. It's perfect, just like distilled water for plants, but energetically it's very expensive to create this kind of water. So whenever possible, always rely on rainwater, or if you live in a place where the water is very soft, you won't have these problems to begin with just using tap water. So yeah, I was using some more RO water here, and I didn't fertilize for quite a while, a few weeks, maybe a few months even, for all my plant growing series, and I saw just a huge improvement in all of my plants, and I figured that was due to flushing out all the salt. So when there's too much salt in the soil, old fertilization, heavy doses of Miracle-Gro, Epsom salts building up over time. And I don't think the vitamins really did all that much, but they do have a buffering effect. So they would make all that calcium carbonate from the crushed vitamin pills would make it hard for the pH to get below 7 to the optimal pH range. So my concerns were largely getting nutrient absorption right, and washing away the salt, and that would make it easier for water to enter the root system. And I think I commented on this already, but the ice cream bean tree, it was getting all gnarly. The branches were growing sort of downwards, and I figured a lot of that had to do with the fact that the water was so hard here. So with all the Miracle-Gro applications, the earth is salted essentially, and it just makes it hard for these plants to absorb water fast enough. So they're absorbing against a heavy salt gradient that's trying to pull the water out from the root system of the plants, pull water out of the plants into cocoa coir. So that's the effect of a high salt gradient. So I figured just by flushing, I'd help my plants out a little, quite a bit. And as for how many gallons you need to do it for pots this big with cocoa coir mass this big, maybe 30 gallons, maybe 50 gallons. Each gallon is 3.78 liters, I believe. So it's a huge volume of reverse osmosis water. It's energetically very demanding. And you can see here's another look. You can see my nice new watering cans that I bought. And yeah, this was at the 10.02 years mark. So I've had this Joshua tree for a decade. Started a series in 2015. Can't believe it's already been 10 years. And you can see the water drop. It has an output in terms of TDS of 9 to 11. That's really good. And this is the water drop system. So I got sort of the mid-level, the 600G model, and the installation seems very intimidating if you've never done any plumbing work. I had a friend, good friend, install this for me, but later on I learned how to uninstall it and install it somewhere else. As I'll discuss later on, I moved, so that's the cause of this series and others coming to an abrupt end. So this is the RO pot desktop countertop system, and this produces 1.7 liters in that glass carafe every 5 minutes. So for drinking purposes, for portability, if you move around a lot, this is very convenient. Obviously, if you're an apartment dweller, etc., it's going to be a lot harder to justify having this under the sink system that requires a little bit of handyman craft to install and uninstall and bring to new places. So this is me applying pesticide. I bought these 2 new bottles of Spectracide. So I'm going to add a little bit of that. Not really measuring it out because as long as you don't get carried away, I mean, you're not going to exceed like the toxicity limits. Just be on the conservative side, I would say. And here's some Physin 20. It's algicide, fungicide, bactericide, viricide. I don't know how much of all those claims are true, but the Physin 20 has fearsome warning labels in regards to toxicity. So here I'm just using one of my new watering cans to fill it with RO water. I'm not going the whole 4 gallons. I'm just doing, slightly under 2, and seeing where that takes me. But yeah, this backpack sprayer has been a real champ in terms of it's a fun thing to use to apply pesticides, fungicides, things like that. So I'm just making a mix here, like a custom solution. I'm not measuring anything out because it's more of a hassle to have to wash all those measuring cups and things like that in sinks. You know, you're dealing with toxic, poisonous substances, and you're getting that in your sinks. It's not something I do in my kitchen sink anymore. I used to at some point, but not with a Physin 20. So here I am just spraying the Joshua tree and all my other plants. So as you know by now, I just had a tendency to give the same treatment to all my plants. So if you see me doing this with the Joshua tree, then I'm doing it with all the plants basically. And after a bit of RO watering, the avocado tree started doing better as well. So the RO watering, for the sake of the pursuit of scientific knowledge and plant growing optimization, I was willing to do this. It was very, very labor intensive, just flushing the entire soil mass, cocoa coir mass, flushing everything around the root ball with just gallons upon gallons of reverse osmosis water. So the reverse osmosis water has nothing in it. It's just leaching out, dissolving all of the dissolved fertilizer, minerals, and things from the hard tap water and all the miracle-grown Epsom salt built up over time. And of course, probably dissolving away the residual calcium carbonate from all those crushed vitamin pills from the past. So yeah, this is just fast forwarded footage of me doing that over and over again. It's a real chore, but I really built up bodily endurance and just fitness doing a lot of this kind of work. It's quite different from weight training. Weight training, it's great for many things and muscular development, but it doesn't build up that kind of practical work endurance that gardening does. So I noticed during the 3 years that I lived here that, yeah, it was just a progression. At first I would get basically have a headache, be a little bit, over fatigued, doing a few hours worth of gardening out in the front. And then as time went by, after like a year or two, I noticed a huge difference in my body. And then by this point, I could just be out there like basically half the day and not really feel anything, except like many hours later, I'd be more fatigued and just want to fall asleep. But you could see the drainage hole. It's already excreting the extra water. So just because you see that happening initially doesn't mean that you've washed out everything satisfactorily. You have to just keep watering to get rid of all the salts deposited and excess minerals deposited in there to change the chemistry, basically the biochemistry of the cocoa coir in relation to the root mass. So yeah, this is just it's just really tedious, and you can see all that watering has exposed the root ball. So there's been more burrow development. It has all these side roots, but it's not like they say in those biology boilerplate textbook blurbs about Joshua tree root growth. It doesn't just like fan out and completely occupy the top. And granted, I have much different growing conditions than Joshua trees in the wild, but it tends to be more like a steep, narrow cone that just goes straight towards the bottom and fans out, and then the roots circle along the bottom and form the root ball. So you can see the water that's pissing out of here. It's not really clear, and it didn't really smell either, but general rule of thumb is it's not good to have sort of this brownish color in the water that's overflowing from your pots, because it just means that there's in this case internal reservoirs full of many gallons of water, and that just means the water is going fetid. And in some of these pots too, I noticed, especially with the California poppy plants, they're already renowned for not doing well in pots, and I'll provide updates on all those other plant growing series to tie everything up. But yeah, the roots in those California poppies burrow into the water reservoir through those little holes, and then they clog up the drainage holes internally, and they keep growing and growing until they eventually clog the hole that you see the water pissing out of right now. So because it's like that, the California poppies just did worse and worse as time went on. And yeah, the cocoa coir in there became very fetid as I uprooted everything before I needed to move. So I'll talk more about that later. But yeah, every time I water a lot, I have to shore up the cocoa coir due to the erosion effect. So I never got around to putting, wire mesh or stones or pebbles to try to shore this up and stop it from happening. I mean, it's either way. I was going to have to put in work to do any of that, and it wasn't going to necessarily completely stop the problem anyway. But yeah, I just decided to do it manually every time I watered like that. And it turned out that, yeah, by the end of September, I had moved away, and that wouldn't have been, necessary anyway, because it doesn't really rain here during spring, summer. It rains a little bit, sometimes sporadically, but it's basically very little rain. So aside from me watering, that stuff isn't going to erode on its own. The cocoa coir is just going to stay compacted after I pat it down and it dries out. So yeah, I can see we lost a bunch of needles again, blades, and I'm going to cut those away at some point. But otherwise, the tree looks pretty healthy. The trunk never got thick like it did with, like all those wild Joshua trees do. So that's kind of disappointing. I mean, maybe it's a little bit thicker, but it's mostly just taller this year. And I've had a lot of webbing that I constantly get rid of. I brush it away, before I start these video sessions to get some new footage. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really unhappy or anything with the way this thing is growing. It's aesthetically pleasing. It's a very tough plant, and it's endured for this long. But I did start to have worries towards the end, and especially when I started I had to move. I just had to. I made the decision for financial reasons, and for within a period of like 3 weeks, I had to. The first thing I did was just wheel out the compost bin to the front yard, and I even used the trash bin, and I got rid of a lot of biomass here. I had to hack everything up, and you see my other plants. You could see, the weeks after, the lemon tree started doing really well as well. But after a while, things started to languish. So at this point, it's been 10.15 years, and the Joshua tree really doesn't change from week to week, or even really month to month. So these clips throughout the entire series, they kind of seem the same, right? There's usually not a lot of change, but you could see this funnel of leaves at the meristem. It's always producing stuff at a glacial pace, and they take forever to kind of grow to the mature length and unfurl. So at day 3721, I finally got mushrooms, returning to my potted plants for the first time in over 10 years. The last time it happened was when I first began this series, and I had like fairy ink cap mushrooms, I believe, growing in my sweet potato pot and other pots, using potting mix from Miracle Grow. So these are a different species, but the only way these returned was due to my flushing with copious amounts of reverse osmosis water. Otherwise, the growing medium was just too salted up and contaminated, so to speak, with Miracle Grow fertilizer. Fungi are very particular in their growing conditions, but for anything such as potting mix, which is rotting wood chips, and cocoa coir, which is ground up coconut husks, if you add enough water and everything's desalted, it should start growing mushrooms. So I was very happy to see these. This is the first one, and then I got a few waves more, and unfortunately I didn't really see waves of mushrooms in my other pots, so maybe those root systems weren't doing as well for like a kind of a symbiosis to happen. I don't know really. I thought mushrooms could just grow regardless of what the plant or the tree is doing, if there's enough water and the conditions are right. I figured this one cap would spread the spores around, and all my pots would start having the same kind of mushrooms showing up in the weeks after, but just wasn't the case. I guess, yeah, mushrooms are very finicky. So you can see this thing has been in full sun for the last 3+ years, and the tips of the blades are more resembling what they do in the wild. They're kind of burned. That's just natural for Joshua trees. So I learned from a mushroom identification group that I posted pictures in that these are from a genus and known to contain psilocybin, the active ingredient of the species that are known for being magic mushrooms. And they also contain psilocin, another psychoactive compound. So the edibility is unknown. These are said to taste very bitter. And I just thought the whole thing was very cool, very interesting. And I had a few months to enjoy a few waves of mushrooms from this pot. But unfortunately, I couldn't replicate that in my other pots. I even threw some of the shriveled ones away after they were done fruiting in the avocado tree pot, the big pot, and for whatever reason the mushrooms just didn't take there. So they're very particular in what growing conditions they like. But yeah, this was after weeks and weeks of just spamming reverse osmosis water into my pots to wash everything out. So initially there was a burst of growth, and I think that was due and I refer to all of my pots for the burst of growth, not just, well, for the Joshua tree, you can't really tell because it grows so slowly. But I had a burst of growth for all my other plants. And that's because I think I reached this happy medium where I had washed away almost all of the Miracle Grow, but there was enough, nitrogen and, phosphorus and other micronutrients for plants in there for the plants to grow optimally. And then after I continued to keep spamming with RO water to wash and wash, I think everything just became completely devoid of nutrients and stopped growing. And just the sheer amount of water, I think also, and the sheer amount of root growth that resulted during that period with my other plant growing series resulted in clogged pores in the pots. So these are the last few clips at 10.43 years, September 12, I believe, where I had to get rid of everything. I made that decision. I sold Josh for 275 US dollars. I started at 500 online and just kind of walked the price down. Somebody haggled and met me in the middle. So the buyer was a man who lives in La Mesa, California. So La Mesa is sunnier and gets hotter than Carlsbad, California. The water is probably a little bit softer, but that's not saying much. And I believe Josh will fare much better from now on, just because he'll be in the ground. And then, it'll be hotter and sunnier. Elevation will be higher. So those are all factors that are more suitable to a Joshua tree. And the person's the man's a plant enthusiast, and he's like, well, I figured I didn't have one of these, so I might as well get this. So this was actually the first thing in my townhouse that sold out of all the items that pieces of furniture that I had to sell. So it was a very pleasant surprise. And yeah, if you were to try to buy this on the open market, like a wild tree, they usually give you something that's a lot thicker than this. That's probably as old, or maybe it's much older. Than it's just they cut off the root ball like they always do with wild plants that are either, I don't know, poached or farmed, or just harvested from the wild lands of inland highlands of Southern California, maybe. And they tend to cut away too much of the root system, especially they cut away the root meristem, too much of the root mass, and then these things tend to die in consumers' hands thereafter, especially in potting mix. So, like what I was saying earlier was these kind of self-watering planters are actually not good, because when you get to the bottom, you rip everything out, as I had to do in September on short notice. I noticed everything smelled horrible and fetid due to the hydrogen sulfide and other toxic gases that are being given off from microbial decomposition. And that stuff kills plant roots. And all the oxygen gets used up down there by decomposition. So root rot kicks in. So that's what was going on. I'll talk a lot more about that later. But for the meantime, thanks for watching this series for 10 years. And I look forward to providing you with more closure updates as soon as possible.